On agenda last week, Tynwald Youth Select Committee members Zara Molnova, Aidan, Clarke and Alex Cowley told us about the work of their committee. This week, these sixth form students talk about their political aspirations and run rings round me in a discussion about the perils and opportunities presented by artificial intelligence. So has Aidan Clarke been encouraged to put his name in the ring for the 2026 Keys election?
I don't think so. Not in 2026 at least. Got other plans before going into any of that for sure. But it would be great to get into politics to try and make a difference. Obviously, it's very important, but not for me at the moment.
And what sort of things would you? Let's assume that you were in the fortunate position of being able to have 3 political wishes granted. What would those be?
Oh, that's a big ask.
Well, even one.
Just on the island, or
wherever you like.
Well, obviously, first one has to be about housing, having affordable housing for everyone on the Isle of Man. That would be a good thing. Second wish, well, I think fixing the climate issues. That's obviously an important one. A third wish, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a lot going on in the world, and it's hard to pin it down. Personally, I think going back to the elections, I think 6 years is a bit too big of a gap between each election. So I think shortening that to say 4 years, so people can have more of a say in the system, is quite a good idea.
And it's 5 years, of course.
5 years. Sorry, yeah.
Let's talk about that then, Zara. What MHKs will say is that the first year that you're elected, if you haven't been elected before, you spend that first year learning how the whole system works, and then by year 4, MHKs have started to become a little bit loath to make any big decisions, certainly any unpopular decisions, because it's getting close to the election. And then when you get into the 5th year, election year, hardly anything happens because everyone's scared that whatever they do will be interpreted incorrectly. So in the system that Aidan describes, of election every 4 years, effectively you only may be getting 1 year of good work out of your MHK, because half the time will be spent electioneering.
Well, I'm not sure, because I know across in the UK that the time to vote is a lot lower, isn't it? So although there may need to be an adjustment period for this time, I think it may count as motivation to try and learn faster and try and get their ideas across in a more efficient way, instead of spending those extra years maybe learning more and going more in depth. They can focus more on their ideas.
And I gave Aidan I granted him three political wishes. What would your 3 political wishes be if you had them?
If I had them, I'm not too sure. I think I would like some more legislation, definitely on private renting, because although it is in place, it's going to go through. They just have to put a little bit of legislation in order to introduce more. Alex, you said something before about them only being able to introduce. How many was it?
4. They've only managed to do 4 in the last year, whereas it used to be 12.
It would be nice to manage to get that back up again, so we're able to look at a more diverse area, such as not only maybe housing but education, mental health, many different things.
And what are the issues as you see them in relation to education and mental health?
For mental health, of course, there is little resources. The waiting list for mental health is really long, and I think for education, obviously we have so many teacher strikes because they are getting paid so little, and as Aidan said before, the Isle of Man is expensive to live in, and because our minimum wage for teachers is lower than in the UK, it's really difficult for them to live. So something to do like with teachers and upping the wages.
And this is something that we hear quite a lot from workers in the public sector, doctors, nurses and teachers, that effectively the value of wages of certain people in the public sector seem to have gone down in comparison over maybe the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, definitely, because like people on minimum wage won't be able to save up a deposit and get a house at all, like without help from the government. So unless you're like in a dual income household and you're earning well above the minimum wage, I think it's pretty much impossible to think about owning a house.
So Alex, I mean, one of the things that you said, which I found quite shocking, is that you've been told that they're only able to prepare 4 pieces of legislation a year now. I mean, that's a terrible indictment on the system if that's the case.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, some of us in the committee met the ex-Chief Minister of Jersey, and Rob Callister and June Watson was there. And afterwards we had a discussion with June Watson, just an informal, but he told me that piece of information. I think that there's talk of getting specialists in to actually deal with it, but I don't think you need specialists because they would charge more, which again would be more government expenditure, when I think there's already people in government qualified. But I think it's just focusing too much on the perfect details. I think that is really the big issue, because if they were able to produce 12 before, I don't know why they can't still.
I've given the other 2 guests the 3 magic political wishes. What would yours be?
I think one would be for the DOI to run more efficiently. That's an Ireland thing. I suppose one would be peace on earth, but that's relative.
That's asking a lot of a political wish, but yes.
And I think just for people to have more motivation to do things. I think a lot of politicians are more than capable, and when you hear the manifestos, I mean, pretty much all MHKs included housing in their manifestos, and yet we're still in this position. And when I was at the budget programme, Alex Allinson said that housing is not just an issue for my generation, but has been for many generations. And so if it's a highlighted issue, then why is it such a problem still many generations down? Why don't we do something about it?
And it is complicated, and perhaps that complication is part of the problem. Do you understand perhaps that maybe after years in fulfilling the sort of role that you're fulfilling, it would be possible that the system starts to wear you down and you start to think, actually, this is impossible. I don't know how we can ever achieve anything.
I mean, I always think where there's a will, there's a way. And if it's getting too much for you, then maybe it's time for somebody else to take on the role. I think it's something that you can't really back down from, because unless it's sorted, it's always going to be an issue. It's something that you have to come face to face with, and we're just trying our best to sort the issue. And as for MHKs, if they feel as if it's too much for them or it's too big an issue, then maybe somebody else would need to try and take on the role.
Well, I did ask Aidan earlier about whether his name might appear on the 2026 ballot paper, but it certainly sounds like you're putting a pitch in there, Alex.
It's something that I hope to do one day, but I want to go to university first. So.
Okay, so which constituency are you in at the moment?
South and Maloo.
Right, so Albury, Castletown and Maloo. Right, oh well, so Jason Moorhouse and Tim Glover, if you're listening, be worried. Aidan then, I mean, you mentioned climate change. There are lots of people in the Isle of Man who fully accept the science and say, yes, climate change, man-made climate change is a real thing and it's causing us significant problems.
Yeah.
There are, though, still plenty of people in the Isle of Man who will point to various fringe experts who will say that actually this is all a made-up thing and it's not a real problem. How do you get those two elements to actually talk to each other in a way that potentially allows for a better understanding on all sides, do you think?
Well, it's kind of hard to, because, well, the vast majority of the scientific community obviously agrees that climate change is man-made and it is a big issue. Getting across to people who don't agree with that is quite difficult, obviously. There's not much more you can do other than trying to present the facts to them. Obviously, there's always going to be those fringe experts who produce their own views, present their own views. But you just have to try and show them the overwhelming evidence of it being man-made in order to try and convince them. And there's always going to be people who you're not going to convince. But that's just the kind of society we live in.
Sometimes I think because the solutions are dressed up as addressing climate change, they're naturally going to put off people who say, well, this is all a government conspiracy or whatever they'll say.
Yeah.
However, if you said, would you like to have reliable, stable energy prices? Most people, I'd struggle to think of anyone other than perhaps an energy company that would say that's a bad thing.
Oh, definitely, yeah. That does happen. If something's presented as green, it does put some people off. But if you say the issues with the wind turbines they're planning on putting up, a lot of people are against that because of seeing it as a green issue. But if you present it as a fact of having a reliable and cheap energy source, like you said, then obviously people can get on board with that a lot easier. So it can be about messaging a lot of these issues. It's about messaging for sure.
And Zara, one of the things that I've put to the other two, and I haven't put to you yet, is your name likely to appear on a ballot paper in an election coming soon?
Although I really do enjoy politics, I'm going to uni to study it, obviously, but I'm hoping to go into law after that, so unfortunately not.
And in terms of climate change, is that a big concern for you as well?
Oh, definitely. I did my EPQ mostly on climate change. It is like a huge issue. Like Aidan said, like there are going to be people that don't believe in it, and there are many people that maybe don't want to turn to more reliable solutions because it is presented as green. I mean, I read a study the other day that there are like scientists put out 2 baskets. One was labelled as like organic and vegan, and the other one was just like healthier. And like 50%, like to 70% of people didn't go with the vegan box just because it said vegan. Like,
Alex, you mentioned world peace. What certainly some political commentators are suggesting is that we're moving away from a time when democracy was seen as the goal for most countries to a much more populist style of governing, where actually using labels in a bad way can actually gain you votes, even though that's likely to lead to more tension in the world.
I think democracy, in my opinion, is always the way. When you see originally what democracy was about, it was about fairness and everybody being able to have the chance to have a say in what they believe. As much as I agree we've kind of drifted a bit from that, I think the original circumstance or idea of that is much better than a world where there isn't any democracy and we just rely on other people, because then it's so much easier for the people to take the power and abuse it.
Most of my life, I lived without social media. I lived without a mobile phone, for goodness sakes, and even a computer. That was fairly... I was certainly a young adult before I got my first computer. Your generation has been brought up with this. Do you think we, in most areas of society there are certain rules and maybe unwritten rules, but ways in which society behaves. Do you think we lack those when it comes to social media?
Yeah, I mean, I think... social media makes it harder for us to think for ourselves, because if we have a lack of education in one topic and we see something about it on social media, we're easily quick to believe what we see, and it doesn't let us develop the skills of critical thinking, questioning what we're seeing, whether we believe in it. It's so easy to be addicted to a phone or a mobile device, and a lot of people think what they see is actual reality.
One of the perhaps more alarming aspects of artificial intelligence is that faking news, getting presidents of the United States of America to appear to say something quite awful, is now the sort of technology that most people who have any understanding of a computer, and I don't count myself among them, could actually relatively easily do.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the rise in AI is definitely a problem, and that is something that politicians are going to have to address. Obviously, with many politicians here in particular being older, I feel like many of them are kind of out of touch with that and don't sort of see it as an issue and don't see how to address it. But obviously, it is something that should be addressed.
Can I just jump in there? We have in school some seminars about AI, and one of the computer teachers said to us, AI is, you can see it as a lorry, unless if it's taken down a street full of people, then it's dangerous, but otherwise the lorry is for perfect good use. And I think we do have to think about that, because AI is just basic software. Like anything, it can be malused. I don't think we should be scared of AI. I think we need to try and use it as best as we can. I mean, it's the people behind the malicious intent. It's the malicious intent that makes it dangerous. The actual software itself, it's not a human. It doesn't have feelings. It can't actually do anything by itself.
Yeah, obviously there's good aspects of AI, definitely, for sure. And I'm not saying it should be banned or anything, but obviously there are a lot of harmful uses for it, and that has to be addressed. I feel like is just because obviously the software itself isn't malicious in any way and how people use it, but obviously people are going to use it in malicious ways, so that has to be addressed.
Of course, artificial intelligence allows for the drudgery of many jobs to be done effectively by a computer rather than someone having to manually process things. Yeah. But of course that also causes a potential problem in that if a computer can do it, the computer maybe costs a couple of £1,000, and then that's maybe some software licensing and things this, but effectively that's it. Whereas if you're going to employ someone, they want to be paid, and they want to be paid every year. So there will certainly be a change in the jobs market.
Yeah, well, exactly. You could say it's sort of similar to the the automation of factories, for example, how it's all production lines now and machines rather than people, and that could happen with AI too. So obviously that could be an issue, because you don't want mass layoffs in favour of AI. People need jobs. So obviously that's another issue of it that definitely needs to be tackled. It needs to be regulated to some degree, so you don't see hundreds or thousands of people put out of a job.
There are people, Zara, on the Isle of Man who were brought up in an era where they didn't have electricity. They drew water from a well, and we used to working with horses. It's quite remarkable, isn't it, how in maybe 3 or 4 generations we've gone from that world, which probably hadn't changed an awful lot for several centuries before that, to where we are now with all this technology.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the only way forward is to obviously learn and adapt the island to account for all these changes. Like, I know that then some places there are classes for maybe older people to learn how to use technology, because an example maybe is banking on the island. I know the bank got shut down in Castletown, so because many people use their phones now and it's just not being used enough, so we have to try and adapt and learn along. So
are you concerned that there may not be jobs for you when you enter the jobs market?
I'm not really too concerned. The way I see it is, even if you automate factories, you still need people to work the machines. Like, say AI art has been a huge discussion, like, are artists going to get out of a job, people that do art? But people can tell when art is soulless and it has no meaning behind it. I don't think that people should be too worried, because if you have a passion, you are going to be able to pursue it. AI and technology, it's not going to have the passion and the same ideas as a human would and would be able to portray. Like, people aren't going to be able to connect with technology the same way they do a human.
Alex?
AI, the foundations of it is no different to what it was in the 90s. It's the exact same, more I say more scares of it now. It's being used more, but there's numerous studies that say using AI in a workplace actually increases productivity and effectiveness. The AI needs somebody to manage it because it isn't, as I say, it's literally just the code. It's all ones and zeros. There's no feelings to it, no emotions. It can't do anything by itself. It needs people to manage it, and the biggest fear would be incompetence, because that's when things would go wrong. People who are trying to manage the coders, sheer incompetence is where things do go wrong, and hackers that just do it for the sake of it. But again, you have hackers now anyway, so the risk, whilst might be worse with AI being able to distinguish if it is AI or not, those issues are going to be here regardless. And I think the more we fear something, the less education we have on it. I don't think we're going to be out of jobs because of AI, because things that require the fine-tuning skills like doctors and people are still going to want to have that human interaction, because AI can't give that human interaction of feeling. They might replace some things, but then more jobs are created because you need people to manage the code and the AI itself. Like in government recently, there's been a job that's opened up, hasn't there, for manager of AI. I mean, that's a job that's been created through AI. Well, you can actually scan documents to see if AI is detected. They're not 100% accurate, but for the most part they will detect on AI. But when you ask something from the AI, if it produces a report for you, that is just information that it has sourced from what's already on the internet. It's equally the same as you going on Wikipedia and just taking out paragraphs at a time and compiling it together. But AI will do that for you. So it's not as if it's some revolutionary thing. It's basically done the step for you of creating it. I think it's a good initiative. If you want to start, say you wanted to start writing that report yourself, you could take points from that it's saying and create it into your own report and write more yourself. It just is a starter, I suppose.
Well, sadly, we are running out of time now, but I do hope that when your report comes out, you will come back and talk to us. I suppose, yes, let's finish with the question to all three of you, starting with you, Aidan. Yeah. I mean, what are your hopes for this the committee? What do you hope it will achieve?
Well, I hope that we can influence the government to some degree. I hope that our report and all our evidence, all our findings, our suggestions will be taken into account by the government and not just discarded, given lip service or anything like that. I hope we can influence the housing policy on the Isle of Man, so we can help not just young people, but obviously young people are our focus, but just anyone, in order to get a house and live in a comfortable and secure home.
Zara?
I very similarly agree with Aidan. I hope not only does the government listen and take our ideas into account, but I also hope that we've reached quite a few young people and they want to know more about politics, maybe look more into the housing situation or other things on the island. And
finally, Alex, as chair, you're now learning the perils of coming last in a series of questions that ask the panelists the same thing. What's your hope for the committee?
Well, the whole point of our committee is to scrutinise the government on a chosen topic and write a report which will be brought to Tynwald. And so I hope that we make a difference for the youth. I hope that we are representative and actually give a voice to the youth, and that change does come about by us doing this.
That was Tynwald Youth Select Committee members and Castle Rushen High School students Zara Molnova and Aidan Clarke, as well as committee chair Alex Cowley from St Ninian's High School. So what do you think? Is fixing climate change and delivering world peace easier than making the DOI more effective? Do you worry about the potential for harm that artificial intelligence presents, or do you perhaps think AI couldn't do any worse than global leaders are doing already? Are you encouraged by these positive young voices and their political aspirations? Don't forget, this programme is available as a podcast on Manx Radio's website. For now, though, I'm Phil Gorn. Goramayu. Thanks for listening.